Hello, everyone, and welcome to our FLAFF 2023 Q&A panel sessions. My name is Kirsten Senske, and I'm the programming manager here at FLAFF. Today, we have the opportunity to speak with some filmmakers who have had their films as part of our 2023 season, and I'd love to begin by having them introduce themselves and the work that they have been a part of.
Hey, my name is Eden De Jesus. I'm a recent NYU graduate, writer-director of the short film Mame.
Hi, I'm Victor Velasco. I'm the writer and director of the film Angelica.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Barragan, and I'm the writer, director, producer for Omet Lalok, Ceremonial Tattoos.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Arauz. I'm the director and producer of the documentary Living Bodies, Cuerpos Vivos.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anita Abbasi. I am the writer-director of the short film Saturday Fuego Diablo.
Hi, I am Daniel Diaz, and I'm the director of the documentary short film Elephant.
Perfect. Thank you guys all for being here today. It's an honor to speak with you all. I'd love to dive into our first question, and I'll also be posting this in our chat as well. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what has inspired your filmmaking process for your film, but also what was the most challenging thing about working on your film?
So what inspires me mainly is my family. I take a lot of inspiration from real life people and character and turn them into characters and try to ground them in locations that I'm familiar with. The hardest process for me was, this was really kind of my first real filmmaking, and the challenge was working with others. We had 30 people working on our film, 4 actors. It was the most people I ever worked with. And it was my NYU thesis film, so it was a very big challenge in doing that and getting my vision across to others.
For Saturday Fuego Diablo is my 5th film, and it came about after really wanting to connect with more of my Salvadoran family, after I've just been feeling a little bit more closer to my Pakistani side. I'm mixed. And I think same as Eden, my film was inspired by my family's stories, specifically what they would have, I tried to find that bridge between feelings of being in between spaces, and what it was like for my family to leave all of their family behind due to the war and arrive in a city that is very different, like Montreal. And I think I just really wanted to sit with what they felt during that time. And I think whenever you're dealing with complex feelings of grief and loss that are unexpressed, I think it's always very challenging. And to make this film, Salvadorans aren't anybody who's Latine in Canada is a very small demographic here. And so I think that's also very challenging to go to funders and ask for funding for your film when the demographic, the audience doesn't seem visible to them. And yeah, I think there were many challenges. I feel like being a filmmaker in general is just challenges are just come with the territory.
So in terms of the inspiration for the film, so Elephant is about the displacement of London's Latin American population, focusing specifically on an area in South London called Elephant and Castle, where there's a shopping centre that was due to be demolished. And so the inspiration from me really was just kind of capturing this moment and kind of just registering this moment. I think there's not been a lot of documentation or just visibility for our community in the UK, despite there being, around a million Latin Americans in the United Kingdom. So it was really about just kind of, capturing and kind of registering this moment, which has really been fundamental in terms of the formation of our identity, really. It's a shopping center that the first kind of Colombian business arrived in the early 90s. And so it's been, kind of three plus decades, kind of a whole generation, and kind of our first generation in terms of kind of staking that claim. So I would say in terms of challenges, kind of that comes with, I guess, just like pressure in terms of just like, you know, doing it justice, and also just kind of like the logistical, I guess, challenges around, you know, the demolition being constantly kind of like delayed and like put off, and timelines kind of shifting, and that coinciding with my move to the US, and yeah, that kind of knock-on effect. And so there's a lot of just kind of like logistical coordination pieces as well, which were definitely a challenge.
So I receive a lot of my inspiration from the rebellious spirit that I have. And I live here on the border in El Paso, Texas, and my family's from Mexico. And, you know, a lot of what is the coverage that you see on the border is a misrepresentation, and it's a very powerful tool to create, you know, certain perspectives, including hatred towards the people here and people who are crossing. And so, you know, I grew up listening to stories from my parents and my mother and my grandmothers, and I feel like maintaining those stories and passing those stories on is really important to challenge the dominant paradigm. And so this particular film has to do with a close friend of mine and his experience growing up on the border and the challenges of being Mexican in a poor community, and this you know, lack of having a father figure. That is a pretty common story in our communities. And he almost went down a really bad path. And it was him discovering his culture and valuing his culture as an Indigenous person that rescued him and continued to practice these his art form, which was tattooing. And so that's, you know, to me is like a rebellious act to tell a humanizing story, to show a face, an Indigenous person's face on the screen, to combat the narrative that just dehumanizes us. And I think the challenges in that is that in this particular film, you know, the ceremonial aspect to his practice, he does stick and poke tattoos, and he's inspired by the Indigenous, his Indigenous heritage. And so I had to make very sure to respect those ceremonial practices. And a lot of it, you know, I chose not to actually put and include in the documentary, because you know, when that happens, it tends to become, you can risk the ceremonies becoming exploited. And so that was a challenge, because I had to find other ways to tell the story without actually showing a lot of the spiritual part aspect to his tattooing. And, you know, just the issue of having a little bit of funding. And I'm lucky to have a lot of community here who stepped up and allowed me to, you know, use their talents and their equipment. But there's a few shoots where I had to just rely on my iPhone. And that was, you know, it's a really powerful tool that we can just, you know, carry a little camera around. But something I learned is shooting in slow motion on your iPhone and seeing it on a big screen doesn't translate well. So on the iPhone, it looks great, but up on the big screen, it was premiered here in El Paso at a film festival, and I was like, oh my goodness, it does not look good. So that was a good learning lesson. Not going to make that mistake again. Thank you.
Well, my short film is about the highest statistics of femicides here in Honduras, and we are labeled globally as one of the world's worst countries to be a woman. And I was pretty upset that this is continuing to happen to a lot of women in Honduras, and this is a global topic. So I decided to make more poetic portraying of violence here in Honduras, not graphic. So the main challenge, one of the challenge was not to victimize again women here in Honduras or any women around the world. So I was part of the space for female filmmakers in Central America, and this space, these women helped me to portray a different way my short film. And also the another challenge was how to film this topic in Honduras without, because I'm a woman and my DP was a woman and is one of my best friends, and how we decided to portray the city. We were like, we couldn't go out of my car while we were filming the city because we could be assaulted in some ways. So we decided that no, for our safety, we should be only inside of a car, film everything through the windows. So it was a challenge, like go around the city and 2 women filming the city, and also be like in safety in some spaces here in Honduras. I was like, this is a creative challenge, but also in a way, it helped me a lot in the creative way to portray differently this kind of violence. So it was a nice adventure, but also like that many women filmmakers here in Honduras or in Latin America, how they can be safe and be documentarians also. Yeah, thanks.
So yeah, so for the film Angelica, I was what really inspired me was that at that time the idea came up when I was interested in the dynamics that happen inside of Uber rides. All our lives, people have told us to not talk to strangers, but now we just meet random people all the time and share our time with them. So I knew a lot of cases when people connect in an intimate way with the driver, even romantic way. And so there's like something hopeful to say about that, you know, not being with strangers all the time is meeting a stranger is not a bad thing, right? Like, of course, with some exceptions. And so for a long time, I didn't have a car, and so I was always, you know, sharing new experiences with Uber drivers, and there was always like a connection when I start speaking English, and then the other person starts speaking English. But when we know that we both speak Spanish natively, then there is like, oh, we just take our guard off, and now we're just speaking how, you know, our brain usually speaks. So it was really interesting to explore that dynamic. At the same time, I was also inspired by the book Madame Bovary. That's pretty revolutionary at the time because it explores depression that caused by the dissatisfaction in life. So putting these 2 elements together, how about if we have like a woman that has dissatisfaction in her current marriage, but shares an Uber ride with a fellow and they have a connection and they are from the same country, and so talks about immigration and how sometimes you can feel lonely when you're not in your culture. So yeah, that was the main inspiration for the film. And the most challenging part was like we shot a 15-minute film in a single day with 7 different locations, most of them outdoor, and we required daylight. And we had even green screen and VFX, and it was shot guerrilla. So it was great because my last project had been like really studio based, but this one was going back to what I feel are like the roots of filmmaking, like going out and just going with your crew, and it feels like you're in a war, you know, and you're playing with everybody. So it was really thrilling in that sense. It required a lot of planning and location scouting. And I actually shot the whole film beforehand with my iPhone. So in that way, we knew exactly what we were getting, and that way I can work better with the actors. And some of the best part is like we had the whole cast and crew so invested in this personal project, right? So with not so much money for budget, right? So it was great to count on them. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your different experiences. I guess kind of tying into our last one, I'd love to learn more about how collaboration has impacted your filmmaking process for these films. And that can be with, you know, people on your team or even within like the communities in which they were shot. Yeah.
So what I want to talk about is the collaboration between the actors. I originally wrote my script in English, But I'm bilingual, I speak English and Spanish at home and everything. And I was always asked this question, how do you know when to switch from English to Spanish and et cetera? And I would talk with the actors and I would say, you know, feel it out and, you know, say that part in English or say that part in Spanish. And sometimes we would come up with jokes that were only in Spanish and we wouldn't translate later when we would put the subtitles in, because I felt like it's a way of communicating with my community and kind of these inside jokes. So I always felt like collaborating with the actors in that way was really fun for me, because it was kind of an opportunity to show myself and my family through that kind of aspect of communication.
Yeah, this is, you know, I moved away a few years from El Paso, but technically this is my hometown, and I've spent a long time here. My family members are here on either side of the border, and from existing in one place for so long, I created a lot of community here, and I really think that some of the films I've shot I wouldn't have been able to do in other places because I relied heavily on the help of my friends who are in the film industry and who had access to equipment for me, and you know, he helped me out a little bit with editing, and then as far as the content, my community is what inspires me, my family, my friends, and so this particular friend of mine, he's a brother of mine who goes to ceremony, and he agreed right away to allow me into his space, allow me to follow him around with the camera. You know, he was just incredibly easy to make a film about, and I thought his story was really interesting and inspiring. He was aligned in a lot of ways with how I grew up and what I grew up around, and so, you know, it was really good to have his permission to go into his, you know, an intimate place with him in his story, and he was able to express some hard things that he's gone through. And yeah, I mean, for me, our education system is, you know, falling apart, and you know, history is being removed, and so having the ability to tell our own stories is really important. And you know, some of my community members, my family members they have hero stories, you know, like despite all odds, they've, you know, survived and they've thrived and they figured a way to keep going. And so this is what drives me, is to do these films for them. And so that's my answer. Thank you.
I feel like for a lot of filmmakers, there's a huge part of the writing and directing part that's like solo work, like a lot of the prep for it. And I was also the co-producer on this, but I was like the main driver, and I assumed a lot of that responsibility. And I think collaborating for me, as much as it is necessary, it just was very unnatural, I realized. And I just had to, I think it was an exercise in like letting go, because your collaborators also have their own interpretation of the work that you want to create, and you have to make space for that. Like, you can be the guiding force, but you also have to be very welcoming of any feedback. And I mentioned in my previous answer about like one of the challenges being like the emotional part. Like all of my lead characters, I ensured that I was casting Salvadorans, and these are people who, like me, are like hold a lot of like generational history and trauma and feelings around like the era and the people that we're trying to depict in this film. So it was also I watched myself get triggered and watched themselves get triggered inadvertently through the process of making this film. Also, because it was like, night shoots are very demanding. It was in the winter in Montreal. And even though I wanted to make a joyful story, it was interesting just how much discomfort started to surface just by virtue of being like confronted with the elements, and how even though like I had assumed this role as leader, and as a director, you think that you're alone in that, but you also have people, like it's very important to surround yourself with people who have your back and who are in line with this vision that you have. Like they're on set because they want to be there. And I didn't believe that. And it wasn't until like the second night of our shoot that I was just like, oh my God, these people actually care. Because like I thought I come from like I just felt like filmmaking had been such a struggle, and it was difficult to understand that my stories or stories like ours are worthy of being told. So I had to kind of confront that as well. So I think that was a really big learning opportunity in terms of collaboration and how to take that on for another project. Yeah.
So regarding collaboration, most of the team members are friends of mine. I have worked in commercials and music videos where I knew no one. So, and that's fine. But I think that what changes when you work with friends is that responsible friends for sure, is that even when you're in a bad situation, you can trust each other. You understand that what could be better than just shooting a film with your friends. And I thought about it recently, and it's a pretty diverse crew, even though it wasn't planned that way. We're just friends, and we're Peruvians, Venezuelans, Mexicans, Russians, second generation Vietnamese, Americans. So it was interesting to see that diversity of ideas, but we're sharing just our passion for filmmaking. And the other thing is like I'm Venezuelan, but both actors are Mexicans. So we had to work together to develop these characters. So we wrote lines during the rehearsals and just changing what was the character motivation, what will that person say at that point, and all these little things that just make the film more real, more authentic. And that was a new experience for me, and it was really liberating just to get feedback of what I've been writing just with other people and just developing together. So yeah, that was a great collaboration.
Collaboration was a big part of my process since the beginning of the idea, like being in a space with other women filmmakers and from different backgrounds. It helped me like to portray with more respect how women suffer violence, not being so graphic, not victimizing again, and portraying in a different way. So it helped me a lot to speak up and raise this awareness about this, but with another level of sensitivity. And also here in Honduras, a lot of the feminist organizations helped me a lot during the investigation process. Like these organizations give mental assistance free of charge, also legal assistance and medical assistance, and they help me to connect with women who suffer different types of violence, and it helped me like hear these women, their testimonies, and grab their stories and make a different script about them in because it's kind of a hybrid, my documentary experimental. So taking these testimonies from women and making more universal, it helped me a lot, the collaborations in many ways to transform this project.
Yeah, I think the collaboration took kind of many forms. I think one of the things that I'm most kind of like grateful for is kind of work, friends that I worked with, and I think especially friends that aren't necessarily like Latin American, that were very willing, they'd kind of been introduced to like the culture and to the neighborhood and to, especially, Colombian culture through me. And they had, a willingness, eagerness, generosity, and at times like bravery to get involved and kind of help us kind of tell the story and kind of recognize the importance of what was going on in South London. So yeah, especially grateful to my producer and editor, Ryan Keane, and cinematographer Rich Felgate, and the three of us, as collaborators, worked together on another feature film climate activism documentary as well, which has just finished its festival run, and kind of seeing both films kind of come out into the world and kind of find their audiences at the same time has been really special as collaborators. And then at the same time, of course, all the kind of participants and subjects, we spent a lot of time together over the course of a year pretty much, with them sharing their stories. And I think earlier on in the process too, a vital piece was the involvement of a non-profit organization called Latin Elephant, which has been doing incredible work over the past kind of decade, kind of advocating and campaigning for the inclusion of kind of migrant and ethnic communities in urban regeneration and throughout the gentrification processes in South London. So I think those were kind of all the key components that the film would absolutely not have happened without those.
Thank you all for sharing. How do you hope that audiences will react to your film?
I feel like I don't want to make a film just for my community, just for Latinos, just for Puerto Ricans or Mexicans. I feel like when I write a story, it is focusing on my community, but at the same time, I feel the more personal I write, the more universal it becomes. And I feel that at some level, people can relate to the authenticity of my story. So I hope that people would react. If you're from that community, you laugh and you have something that feel connection with. You see your family, you see yourself. But at the same time, I want to get to a level where anybody could watch it and have that same reaction, because there's some kind of something that speaks to what it means to just be a human in a family and in a larger community.
I want to use my work to create compassion and humanity, and like I said before, put a face to a human face to the people who live here, the migrants who cross over, and also to show a multi-layered complexity to our identity that challenges what's normally in film and normally on the news about who we are. And I feel like the more we tell stories that are that show that complexity and that bring the audience into our personal lives, the more we'll be able to just create space for more people to have a different view on who we are as Latina people, as Indigenous people on the border. So yeah, I think ultimately it's for the people here, but I appreciate what you said, Eden too, because I also know that there are going to be people outside of our culture who are hopefully going to be able to see these films and just broaden their perspective through our work.
I'm struggling to know what to expect from my audience, because I don't, but I really value any feedback I've received so far and will be receiving in the future. I really feel like audiences are so integral to the storytelling process, because they have they pick up on their own things, like in the story you're trying to tell. Like as a filmmaker, I think we make a bunch of unconscious choices and we integrate them into our film, and some people pick up on them. And we're not even aware of that. So I really like those moments shared whenever an audience brings something up. And I was surprised that it was in there, but it makes sense. And I think it also comes down to the fact that we're just human, and we're trying to tell stories that are rooted in emotions that are universal at times. And even though they're very specific to a certain type of a certain people's experience, we're still just really like trying to convey like a moment in time of a person. And I think that can like really like break like certain barriers in terms of who our audience like looks like. I think when I'm writing, I make it a goal to I'm choosing an audience who wants to see themselves reflected. So I try to be the image that I want to see out in the world. Like I really do want people to see themselves in the stories I'm telling, because my cultures are very underrepresented in cinema. So for me, that's my first point of inspiration. And then from there, I feel like if you're focused on emotions, like you can really you'll be surprised at who comes up to you afterwards and asks questions. And that's my favorite part too. I just want them to keep asking questions, because I don't think I have all of the answers, or my film has all of the answers, but I think through dialogue about something, and that's what art is, it's just like a starting point.
So I think this is a great question. It took me a while to think about it, but I think it's related to what inspired me to make the film. So right now I feel we're in pretty isolated times. We're always on a phone or on a screen, right on our eyes, in our eyes, and we forget that even a driver or a Starbucks person is a human being, and it can give you something of value. It might be just quality time at that moment. And I think we're just missing that human connection for people that we don't know online, or people that they don't even know that you exist. So that's what I want to touch in here. Like maybe the biggest connection is right next to you and you're missing it out.
For reaction, one of my goals was to the audience to feel empathy and compassion, and that women feel supported. Like I believe every woman has suffered different types of violence in their whole life, so they should feel like empathy and trying to empower to speak up against these patriarchal systems that make this violence. And also the film should also help men to speak up and be part of the discussion of making a safer place, a space for women, and they're part of this problem to be solved. And it should be like a work with everyone, not just women. And this film should also be being like a hard topic to speak up. And I know like many women that have told me that I cry and I couldn't speak up, but later in the late days later, they tell me like, thank you for showing this film. So it's part of the process. Like this film should be part of the process to speak up and feel empathy to others.
I'll go. I think that there's, I think primarily I did kind of want this film to connect with Latin American audiences, kind of more so than anyone else. I think that definitely was a focus. I think I made it kind of like for us and for the community in London and in the UK with this kind of, catalyst, like objective around kind of like our own kind of like, collective memory and kind of like archive. But I think there's also part of me that was very kind of hopeful, I guess, around connecting with, the diaspora kind of further afield. I think if within London itself, there's barely any awareness of the million Latin Americans that exist there outside of our own community. I've definitely found since moving to the US that there's not much awareness around, the community in the UK. So I know that there are a lot of, there are obviously nuances and everything, but there are a lot of kind of parallels. And I think that this is a story that's, been lived and will be relived many times over in Latin American and migrant communities across the world. So I think that was definitely something that I hoped for the film. And then I think beyond that, outside of the context of the Latin American community and other migrant communities, I think there's an important piece too around just kind of the humanizing of these spaces, and really kind of conveying and portraying what they mean, and really, you know, hopefully being able to create an understanding around the impacts of gentrification, of like progress, and what that means, and who that progress is kind of serving. So yeah.
Great. Is there anything else before we close off the session that anybody would like to add to any of the questions that maybe you forgot to mention, or that you just would like to say now?
I'd just like to say one thing.
Yeah.
I feel like this conversation illuminated a lot of stuff for me. And sometimes when you're creating, I know within, let's just say, my NYU community, it does feel kind of isolating sometimes. And to be able to talk with people and other filmmakers and be able to relate on a very specific level is very helpful for me, I think, as a filmmaker. And I think it makes me want to watch all you guys' films, but also it makes me feel like, you know, you're not alone. There is a community out there for you. And it gives me kind of, it inspires me to keep on going and keep on creating.
Well said.
Yeah, ditto. Like super enriching to have an opportunity to talk with other filmmakers. Thank you for creating this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for making this virtual, because I know we're in different countries and I wasn't able to go to the festival, but creating these spaces has been like really inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. Very grateful to share this time with you all.
Yeah, thank you for this space. I think it's really beautiful what the Film Festival, Philadelphia Latino Film Festival, is doing. And I wish you all luck in your careers. Keep going.
All right. First of all, thank you all for being present in this space. I just want to very quickly say that we're very grateful here at PHLAFF to have been able to have your work as a part of this year's season. So thank you so much. And to our audiences at home that are watching this, we just want to thank you as well. You are also part of the reason why PHLAFF can happen. And for anybody that would like more information about the festival season or any of the year-long programming or events that occur at PHLAFF, please be sure to check out the website at phlaff.org. But for now, thank you to the filmmakers and thank you audiences for being a part of this.